Hi, I'm Jean, and today we're going to talk about pronunciation of the letter T. Not the true T that you hear in words like table, or talk, or wait. No, we're going to talk about the T you hear in words like unity, reality. That's called a flap T. We'll talk about that, when to use that T, and we will also talk about what is called the glottal T that you hear in words like button or mitten. So if you've ever wondered how we use these sounds, when we use these sounds, how these sounds are created, stick around. This video is for you. Let's start with the true T. This is the one that you're probably most comfortable with. Most languages have this sound. It's that t, t. This sound we hear in words like talk, teach, tell, t, t, t. That's called the true T. Since we're already familiar with that, we'll get right into our other pronunciations, starting with the flap T. To understand when we use this T, we must first remind ourselves of the vowels in the English language, which are A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. And then you have your semivowels, which is the letter L and the letter R. Let's talk about the pronunciation of this T. They call it a flap because it's actually created by the tongue hitting the top of the mouth, the roof of the mouth. And it sounds more like a D than a T, but it's a fast D. I always tell my students, this is a fast D. So if we take a word like university, look at the letters. The T is situated between the letter I, a vowel, and the letter Y. So in this instance, we would use that flap T, and I would pronounce this word university. University. You hear that? University, university. It's a fast D. It's safe to say that any word ending in ITY, ETY, you're going to use that flap T. University, responsibility, anxiety. Those are all words that you can automatically know, okay, these words where that T is stationed between a vowel and a Y, you're going to be using that flap T. And this is definitely different from British English. I want to make that clear. Pronunciation in American English can be different from pronunciation in British English, where that true T is used in words like water. In the United States, when we speak English, that word has that flap T. It's stationed between an A and an E. The T is between the A and the E, so we give it that fast D treatment, and we call it water. But in the UK, in British English, it's water, water. And you hear that t, t, and the R is not so strongly pronounced. So just something to keep in mind, that sounds and pronunciations can differ depending on where the English that you're speaking originates. On to the next. Let's talk about the glottal T. This one is different, and it can be a little bit more difficult because unlike the true T, 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 and the flap T, as in words like unity, the glottal T is not created in the mouth, but here in the throat. So we create this glottal T, this kind of invisible T sound, by closing the airway in the throat very quickly. And a way to test this, a way to try this, is to take your hand, place it here on your throat, and say, uh-oh, uh-oh, uh-oh. And when you do that, you will feel the airway open and close in your throat. That is how we create this sound. So a word like button, it's the same thing. That airway shuts and opens really quickly. So that T is not there. It isn't there. But you hear it. Your mind hears it because there is this brief stop, this cutting off of the sound right there in the throat. Let's talk about when to use this glottal T. Now, one way that we use this T is after a syllable. For example, right side. I sleep on my right side. Another example for a word like network, social network, network, network. Again, that brief closing of the airway. Another way that we use it is before a nasal sound. For example, that comes from the letter N. That's a nasal sound. And so we use the flap before a nasal sound. For example, words like button, because you got that N at the end. So if there's a T before that, it's going to be that glottal stop. We also use the glottal stop when making contractions. For example, I can't come. I have to work. I can't come to the party. So not I can't come to the party. I can't come to the party. The English language, especially in the United States, is very reduced. And if you've been studying for a while, you know very well that we connect words together. They kind of melt. They take similar sounds in spoken English. Well, the same applies with this glottal T. In most cases, if the T is at the end of a word and the next word has a consonant sound, then we're going to use that glottal T. For example, don't come this way, go that way, go that way. You hear that? Not that way, go that way. That last sound is a T and the next is a consonant sound. Same with this example. He cut me a piece of cherry pie. Cut me a piece of cherry pie. So that T is there at the end of cut, and that next sound is a consonant sound, me, also nasal. But if we change the following letter, if we change the following letter into a vowel, in a sentence like, he cut a piece of pie for me, he cut a piece of pie for me. He cut a piece of pie for the child. He cut a piece of pie. You see how it changes? Because that glottal T, as in he cut me a piece of pie, becomes he cut a piece of pie for me. So again, whether it's the flap T, that fast D, or the glottal T, the closing and opening of the airway, it really just depends on the sounds before and after that T. Hopefully this lesson has helped you to understand a little bit more about how we use these two T's. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments section for me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.